They excluded me from the vacation, so I revealed I own the resort they're staying at. The notification sound on my phone had been going off all morning like a broken fire alarm.
Ping, ping, ping.
Each buzz made my heart race a little faster because for once, just once, I was actually included in something. The family group chat had exploded overnight with messages about Aunt Brenda's retirement celebration trip. My cousins Tasha, Monica, and Jade were planning something big, something expensive, something that screamed, "Look at us," on social media. And somehow, miraculously, I was part of the conversation. "Girl, we need to do this right for Andy," Tasha had typed at 2 a.m., followed by a string of champagne and airplane emojis. I'm thinking Caribbean. 5-star resort. The works. I had stared at my phone screen in the darkness of my studio apartment, hardly believing it. After 28 years of being the family afterthought, the one who got invited to events through my mom as an obligatory +1, they were actually including me in the planning. Monica chimed in next. "I found this gorgeous place called Sunset Paradise Resort in St. Lucia. Look at these pictures." She flooded the chat with screenshots of infinity pools, pristine beaches, and suites that probably cost more per night than I used to make in a month. "Book it." Jade responded immediately. "Whatever it costs. Auntie deserves the best." My fingers hovered over my phone keyboard. Part of me wanted to jump in with enthusiasm, but another part, the part that had been disappointed too many times, held back. These were the same cousins who forgot to invite me to Monica's baby shower, who somehow always had their big family dinners on nights when I was supposedly too busy to attend. But Aunt Brenda had always been different. She was my mom's younger sister, the one who remembered my birthday every year, who asked about my job with genuine interest, who never made me feel like the odd one out. If anyone deserved a perfect retirement celebration, it was her. "Count me in," I finally typed. "When are we thinking?" The responses came fast and excited. Tasha started a new group specifically for the trip planning, adding all of us plus a few more cousins I barely heard from. For the next 3 days, my phone buzzed constantly with messages about room arrangements, dinner reservations, spa appointments, and excursion plans. I felt lighter than I had in years. Finally, I was part of something. Finally, I belonged. Then the messages started shifting. It began subtly. Tasha created a new chat called Room Assignments, but somehow forgot to add me. When I mentioned it, she quickly added me back with a "oops. Phone glitch, girl." But I noticed the conversation in that chat had been going on for hours before I was included. Next, Monica started a thread about splitting costs, but the numbers didn't quite add up. When I asked for clarification, there was a long pause before Jade responded. "Oh, we're still working out some details. Don't worry about it for now." Don't worry about it. Those 4 words that had followed me my entire life. Don't worry about not being invited to the cousins' weekend. Don't worry about not being in the wedding party. Don't worry about sitting at the kids' table until you were 25. The final blow came on a Thursday morning. I was in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports for my investment portfolio, when my phone buzzed with a direct message from Tasha. "Hey, Kira. So, we have some bad news about the trip." My stomach dropped. Turns out the resort is more popular than we thought. When we went to finalize the booking, they said they're actually fully booked for those dates. The only rooms left are these tiny standard ones that don't even have ocean views. We try to get more rooms, but there's literally nothing available. I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold in my hands. "So here's the thing," her message continued. "We had to make some tough choices about who gets the remaining rooms. Obviously, Auntie Brenda gets the best suite. And then we figured it made more sense to prioritize the people who've been planning this from the beginning, you know? The ones who've been doing all the heavy lifting with research and bookings." My throat tightened. There it was. The familiar sting of being pushed to the margins, dressed up as logistics. "I'm really sorry, Kira. I know you were excited, but there's just not enough space. Maybe next time we can plan something that works better for everyone? Hope you understand." I set my phone down and stared out my window at the city skyline. Of course, I understood. I always understood. I understood that despite my designer work clothes and the expensive art on my walls, they still saw me as broke little Kira. I understood that no matter how much I'd changed, how much I'd grown, how much I'd accomplished, I would always be on the outside looking in. What they didn't understand, what none of them could possibly know, was that 3 days ago, my investment firm had finalized the purchase of a luxury Caribbean resort. A deal I'd been working on for 11 months. A property that was about to become the crown jewel of my real estate portfolio. A resort called Sunset Paradise. I picked up my phone and typed back, "No worries. Have fun." Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the resort's booking system. Time to make my own reservation. The irony wasn't lost on me as I scrolled through the booking interface for my own resort. Sunset Paradise, soon to be renamed Isla Marie, had been my obsession for almost a year. While my family saw me as the quiet, struggling cousin who brought Tupperware containers to potlucks instead of designer handbags, I had been quietly building an empire they couldn't even imagine. It started in college when I realized that being invisible had its advantages. While my cousins posted every purchase, every vacation, every relationship milestone on social media, I learned to move in silence. I studied computer science and business, graduating with honors while they were still switching majors. I landed my first tech job at a startup that nobody had heard of, which later sold to Google for $2.8 billion. My share of that acquisition? Let's just say it was enough to make me very, very comfortable. But I kept living like I was still broke. Same modest apartment, same sensible car, same thrift store wardrobe mixed with a few quality pieces I'd bought strategically. My family never asked about my work beyond polite small talk, and I never volunteered information. When they saw me at family gatherings, they saw what they expected to see. Quiet Kira, still finding her way, still struggling to keep up with their glamorous lives. They had no idea I'd transitioned from tech into private real estate investment. They didn't know about the portfolio of properties I'd been building across 3 states, or the investment firm I'd started with 2 partners from my old company. They certainly didn't know that I'd been eyeing Caribbean resort properties for months, looking for the perfect opportunity to diversify into hospitality. Sunset Paradise had been struggling. The previous owners were old-school hoteliers who understood service, but not modern marketing or operational efficiency. The property was stunning. Pristine beaches, lush tropical gardens, world-class amenities, but occupancy rates were down, and they were bleeding money. When it hit the market, I saw potential where others saw problems. The acquisition had been complex, involving multiple investors and a complete operational restructuring. But 3 days ago, the papers were signed. I now owned 75% of one of the most beautiful resorts in the Caribbean, with full operational control. I scrolled through the booking system, checking the dates my family had chosen for their trip. March 15th to 22nd. Peak season. Premium rates. And according to the system, they had booked 3 ocean view suites under Tasha's name, confirming my suspicions about the no rooms available story. My cursor hovered over the reservation details. Tasha Miles, Monica Brown, Jade Williams, and Brenda Miles. For names. For rooms. No mention of limited availability. I could have canceled their reservation right then. 1 click, and their perfect vacation would disappear. But that would have been too easy, too obvious. Instead, I opened a new booking window and reserved the presidential villa, the resort's most exclusive accommodation, under my business name, KM Enterprises. Then I did something that surprised even me. I picked up my phone and called the resort's general manager, Carlos Mendez. We'd worked together throughout the acquisition process, and he was one of the few people who knew the resort had changed hands. "Carlos, it's Kira. I'm going to be staying at the property next week during the Miles party reservation. I want to observe operations firsthand, but I don't want the staff to know I'm the new owner yet."
Can you handle that?
Of course, Ms. Miles. Should I brief the staff about any special requirements for your stay? No special treatment. I want to experience the resort exactly as any other guest would. The only difference is I'll be watching how we handle demanding customers. I paused, thinking about Tasha's history of treating service workers poorly. I have a feeling this group might be challenging. Understood. I'll make sure your identity remains confidential. Should I arrange for you to meet with department heads during your stay? Let's see how things go first. I'll reach out if needed. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and stared at the confirmation email for my villa reservation. In 1 week, I would be sharing a resort with the family members who had just excluded me from their vacation. They would be staying in rooms I owned, eating at restaurants I controlled, being served by staff I employed. And they would have no idea. I opened my laptop and began researching everything I could about their social media presence, their usual vacation behavior, their expectations. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I wanted to understand exactly who they were when they thought nobody important was watching. The planning took 3 days. I arranged for a private driver, booked spa treatments under my alias, and even had my assistant coordinate with the resort's activities director to ensure I'd have plenty of opportunities to observe my family's behavior without being noticed. The night before my flight, I packed carefully. No designer luggage, no flashy jewelry, no obvious displays of wealth. Just simple, elegant clothes that would let me blend in while still looking like I belonged at a 5-star resort. As I folded my clothes into my plain black suitcase, I thought about all the family gatherings where I'd felt invisible, all the times I'd been treated like an afterthought, all the years of being underestimated. Tomorrow, the tables would finally turn. I arrived at Isla Marie 2 hours before my family's flight was scheduled to land. The resort was even more beautiful than the photos suggested. Coral stone buildings nestled between swaying palms, crystal clear water lapping at pristine white sand, and gardens so lush they looked like something out of a fairy tale. Carlos greeted me personally at the front desk, his professionalism impeccable as he handed me the key to the presidential villa without any fanfare. To anyone watching, I was just another wealthy guest checking in. "Your accommodations are ready, MS?" He paused, remembering our agreement. "Johnson," I supplied, using my mother's maiden name. "Thank you." My villa was spectacular. 2 levels, private infinity pool, and a panoramic view of the Caribbean Sea. But I wasn't here for the luxury. I was here for the show that was about to begin. At 3:47 p.m., I watched from my terrace as a black SUV pulled up to the main entrance. Even from a distance, I could hear them before I could see them. Loud voices, laughter that carried across the grounds, the kind of energy that announced, "We have arrived, and we expect to be noticed." Tasha emerged first, wearing a white designer sundress that probably cost more than most people's rent, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She immediately started filming herself with her phone, panning to show the resort entrance. "Y'all, we have arrived at paradise. This place is about to be lit." Monica and Jade followed, equally overdressed for a beach resort, dragging designer luggage that clicked loudly across the stone pathway. And finally, sweet Aunt Brenda, looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur, but smiling nonetheless. I slipped on a simple cover-up and baseball cap, grabbed a book, and positioned myself at the poolside bar where I could observe the check-in process. The bartender, a young man named Miguel, was polite and efficient as he served my virgin mojito. "Excuse me." Tasha's voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere like a foghorn. She had approached the front desk with the confidence of someone who believed the world revolved around her. "We have reservations under Miles. And let me just say, we chose this resort specifically because of your reputation. We're influencers, you know. Combined, we have over 200,000 followers." The desk clerk, a professional woman named Sarah, smiled warmly. "Welcome to Isla Marie. We're delighted to have you. Let me pull up your reservation." "I hope our rooms are ready," Monica chimed in, flipping her hair. "We had a long flight, and we need to freshen up before our sunset photo shoot." Sarah's fingers moved efficiently across her keyboard. "Everything is prepared for you. 3 ocean view suites as requested. I just need to confirm a few details and process your resort fees." "Resort fees?" Jade's voice pitched higher. "Nobody mentioned resort fees. That should have been included in our rate." I watched Sarah maintain her professional composure. "The fees cover all resort amenities, Wi-Fi, fitness center access, daily housekeeping, and complimentary water sports equipment. It's standard for all guests." "Well, it shouldn't be standard for us," Tasha said, leaning on the counter. "Like I said, we're influencers. We're going to be promoting this place all week. That's worth more than some Wi-Fi fee, don't you think?" The entitlement in her voice made my jaw clench. Sarah handled it gracefully, explaining the policy while offering to have someone escort them to their rooms. But the tone was set. Over the next 2 days, I watched my family's true colors emerge like paint bleeding through primer. They were consistently rude to housekeeping, complaining that towels weren't fluffy enough and demanding fresh linens twice daily. They sent back perfectly prepared meals, claiming the seasoning was too ethnic or not Instagram-worthy. But it was their treatment of the servers that really got to me. Thursday evening, I was dining alone at the beachfront restaurant when I overheard the conversation that made my blood boil. Tasha, Monica, and Jade were at a table near mine, having drinks while Aunt Brenda rested in her room. Their server, a young woman named Isabella, who had been nothing but gracious and professional, approached with their dinner order. "Ladies, I have your jerk chicken, your grilled fish, and your vegetarian pasta," Isabella said with her lovely Jamaican accent. "Finally," Monica muttered. "We've been waiting forever." "I apologize for any delay," Isabella responded kindly. "The kitchen was preparing everything fresh for you." Tasha picked at her chicken, made a face, and pushed the plate away. "This is too spicy. I specifically said mild seasoning." "I can have the kitchen prepare something else for you," Isabella offered. "No, forget it. I'll just eat around it." Tasha turned to her cousins, speaking loudly enough for Isabella and other diners to hear. I swear, they never listen properly. It's like they don't understand English. Isabella's smile faltered for just a moment, but she maintained her professionalism. "Is there anything else I can get for you ladies?" "Actually, yes," Jade said, not looking up from her phone. "This wine tastes cheap. Can you bring us something better? Something that actually costs more than $10 a bottle." The wine they were drinking was a $95 bottle of French Chablis. When Isabella brought the check an hour later, I watched in disgust as they left exactly $3 on a $240 bill. $3. For a woman who had bent over backward to accommodate their complaints and attitude. But the final straw came Friday morning. I was reading by the pool when Tasha marched up to the concierge desk with all the subtlety of a hurricane. Her voice carried across the entire pool area. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge here," she announced. "We are not happy with our accommodations." The concierge, a dignified man named James, immediately gave her his full attention. "I'm sorry to hear that. How can I assist you? For starters, our rooms are nice, but they're not special enough. We saw online that you have a presidential villa. We want to be upgraded. For free." James maintained his professional demeanor. "I understand your interest in the presidential villa. Unfortunately, it's currently occupied by another guest." "Well, move them," Tasha said as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. "We've brought so much attention to this place with our social media posts. Do you know how much free advertising we're giving you? The least you can do is show some appreciation." That's when I knew it was time to stop watching and start acting. I closed my book, stood up from my lounge chair, and walked over to the concierge desk. Time for my family to learn who they were really dealing with. I approached slowly, my heart pounding but my face calm. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind a dozen times, but now that it was happening, everything felt surreal. Tasha was still berating James about the presidential villa upgrade when she noticed me walking toward them. Her expression shifted from irritation to confusion to fake surprise. "Oh my God, Kira?" She blinked rapidly, as if I were a mirage. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, keeping my voice light and casual. "Hey, Tasha. Enjoying your vacation?" Monica and Jade had materialized beside her, drawn by the commotion. Their faces mirrored Tasha's bewilderment. "Girl, how did you— we thought you couldn't make it," Monica stammered. "The resort was supposed to be fully booked." "Funny thing about that," I said, glancing at James, who was watching our interaction with professional interest. "Turns out there was availability after all." Jade crossed her arms, her designer sunglasses sliding down her nose. "So, you just decided to show up anyway? Without telling us? That's kind of weird, Kira." The audacity was breathtaking. They had lied to exclude me, and now I was the one being made to feel awkward for being there. Actually, I said, my voice gaining strength, I didn't just show up. I booked a room. A really nice room. Tasha's eyes narrowed. What room? We checked. Everything decent was taken. I looked directly at her. The presidential villa. The silence that followed was deafening. Pool sounds faded into background noise. Even James seemed to hold his breath. That's impossible, Tasha said finally. We literally just asked for that room. It's occupied. Yes, I said simply. By me. Monica laughed, but it sounded forced. Kira, stop playing. How could you afford the presidential villa? That suite costs more per night than most people make in a month. You're right, I agreed. It does cost a lot. But here's the thing about expensive rooms. They're a lot more affordable when you own the place. The words hung in the air like smoke. I watched as comprehension dawned on their faces in slow motion. Own the place, Jade repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to James. Could you please clarify for my family who owns Isla Marie? James straightened his shoulders, clearly sensing this was an important moment. Certainly. The resort is owned by KM Enterprises, with Ms. Kira Miles as the majority owner and managing partner. The sound Monica made was somewhere between a gasp and a squeak. Tasha's mouth fell open. Jade actually took a step backward. That's not possible, Tasha said, shaking her head. You can't own this place. I'm what? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. You're not. She gestured vaguely at the resort, at the luxury around us. This isn't. How? I could have explained everything then. The startup acquisition, the years of smart investments, the careful planning that led to this moment. Instead, I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Actually, I continued, I should thank you. Your reservation was one of the first I reviewed when I took over operations. Tasha Miles, Monica Brown, Jade Williams, and Brenda Miles. 4 Ocean View suites, booked 3 months in advance. Which was interesting, since you told me the resort was fully booked. Tasha's face went through several color changes. Kira, we can explain. Can you? I interrupted. Because I'd love to hear the explanation for lying to family about room availability at a resort you didn't know I owned. We didn't lie, Monica said quickly. There were complications. The complication was me, I said bluntly. I wasn't good enough to vacation with you. I wasn't successful enough, rich enough, whatever enough. So you decided to exclude me and hoped I'd quietly accept it like I always do. Aunt Brenda appeared then, having heard the raised voices. She looked between us with growing concern. What's going on? Kira, honey, what are you doing here? Hi, Aunt Brenda, I said, my voice softening. I'm here because I own this resort. She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly smiled. Of course you do. My brilliant niece, always full of surprises. Her simple acceptance, so different from her daughter's shock and skepticism, nearly broke my composure. Auntie, she's lying, Tasha said desperately. She can't own this place. Look at her. She's wearing a $10 sundress and flip-flops. I looked down at my simple outfit, then back at her designer everything. You know what the difference is between us, Tasha? You spend money to look rich. I spend money to get richer. James cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private? But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Actually, I think this is perfect, I said. Because there's something else we need to discuss. James, could you pull up the guest conduct reports for the Miles party? James's expression became carefully neutral. Of course, Ms. Miles. Guest conduct reports? Monica's voice cracked. Oh yes, I said sweetly. See, I've been watching you all week. How you treat my staff, how you behave in my resort, how you represent yourselves as guests in my establishment. And I have to say, I'm not impressed. The fear in their eyes was palpable now. Good. It was time they learned there were consequences for their actions. What happens now is up to you, I said. We can handle this quietly, or we can make it a learning experience for everyone. Tasha found her voice. Kira, please. We're family. We made a mistake, but we're family. I looked at her for a long moment. Family doesn't exclude family. Family doesn't lie to family. And family definitely doesn't treat working people like garbage. What do you want? She whispered. I smiled. I want you to earn your stay. The next morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I watched from my villa's balcony as my family gathered reluctantly in the resort's conference room. I had sent each of them a formal invitation the night before. Mandatory guest conduct session, 8 a.m., conference room A. The invitation had been printed on official resort letterhead and delivered by staff members who maintained perfect professional courtesy despite my cousin's protests and questions. When I walked into the conference room, the scene was exactly what I expected. Tasha sat with her arms crossed, radiating defiance. Monica kept checking her phone, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Jade looked like she was preparing for battle. Only Aunt Brenda seemed genuinely interested in what was about to happen. Carlos Mendez stood at the front of the room with a presentation screen behind him. I had briefed him thoroughly the night before about what I wanted to accomplish. Good morning, everyone, I said, taking my place beside Carlos. Thank you for attending this mandatory session. I know this is unconventional, but then again, so is having to address guest behavior that violates our resort's core values. This is ridiculous, Tasha muttered. We're paying customers. You can't make us sit through some corporate training session. Actually, I said calmly, I can. And you're going to participate, or you'll be finding alternative accommodations. Your choice. The threat was clear, and for once, Tasha fell silent. Carlos stepped forward with a tablet in his hands. Over the past 4 days, we've documented several incidents that fall below our standards for guest conduct. His voice was professional but firm. Verbal dismissal of staff members, cultural insensitivity, failure to follow resort policies, and inappropriate treatment of service personnel. He began reading from his tablet. Wednesday evening, complaint lodged by restaurant staff regarding derogatory comments about accents and cooking methods. Thursday afternoon, housekeeping reported being spoken to in a demeaning manner and having their work criticized inappropriately. Friday morning, concierge staff documented demands for free upgrades accompanied by threats and entitled behavior. With each item Carlos read, I watched my cousins sink lower in their chairs. Monica was no longer checking her phone. Jade was staring at the table. Even Tasha seemed to be grasping the seriousness of the situation. But here's what really bothers me, I said, standing up. It's not just that you were rude. It's that you were rude to people who were working hard to make your vacation perfect. People who have families, dreams, and dignity that you completely ignored. Aunt Brenda spoke for the first time. Kira's right. I've been watching too, and I've been ashamed of how we've acted. Auntie, you don't need to, Tasha started. Yes, I do, Aunt Brenda interrupted, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. I worked in hospitality for 15 years before I became a teacher. I know what it's like to smile while someone treats you like you're invisible. I raised you girls better than this. The room fell silent. Aunt Brenda's words carried weight that mine couldn't, coming from someone they'd never seen as competition or a threat. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You have 2 choices. Option 1. You can check out now, no hard feelings, and find somewhere else to finish your vacation. I paused, watching their faces. Option 2. You stay, but you earn the privilege. This afternoon, you'll participate in a beach cleanup with a local environmental group that partners with our resort. Tomorrow, you'll spend 4 hours working with our kitchen staff to understand what goes into preparing the meals you've been complaining about. And every single staff member you were rude to gets a personal apology from you, not because I'm making you, but because it's the right thing to do. That's insane, Jade said. We're on vacation. We're not here to do manual labor. Then leave, I said simply. But if you stay, you follow the program. No exceptions, no shortcuts, no special treatment because we're related. Monica raised her hand tentatively. What if we do all this? Then what? Then you might actually learn something about respect, humility, and what it means to treat people like human beings instead of servants. Tasha stood up abruptly. This is humiliating. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Getting revenge on us. I looked at her for a long moment. You know what would be revenge, Tasha? Kicking you out immediately and posting about your behavior on social media for your 200,000 followers to see. What I'm offering you is a chance to grow. The room fell quiet again. I could see the internal battles playing out on their faces. Pride versus pragmatism, entitlement versus embarrassment. I need to think about it, Monica said finally. You have until noon, I replied. Carlos will be coordinating with whoever decides to stay. As they filed out, Aunt Brenda lingered behind. She walked over to me and took my hands in hers. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. Not because of what you've built, but because of who you've become. You could have humiliated us, but instead you're trying to teach us. You don't need the lesson, Auntie, I said. You never did. She smiled sadly. Maybe I need it most of all. I watched them behave this way and didn't speak up. That makes me complicit. By noon, I had my answers. Monica and Jade chose to participate in the program, genuinely seeming to understand they'd crossed a line. Tasha booked a flight home that afternoon, too proud to admit she'd been wrong but smart enough to know she couldn't win this battle. And Aunt Brenda? She asked if she could help coordinate the activities, saying she wanted to make sure the lesson stuck. Watching my family, or at least part of it, begin to understand the value of treating others with dignity was more satisfying than any revenge could have been. The real test would be seeing if the lesson lasted beyond their vacation. 3 days later, I stood on my villa's terrace, watching the sunrise paint the Caribbean sky in shades of coral and gold. In a few hours, my family would be checking out, and this strange chapter of my life would be closing. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Monica and Jade had thrown themselves into the community service program with surprising enthusiasm. Yesterday, I'd watched Monica, who hadn't touched anything dirtier than designer handbags in years, spend 4 hours collecting plastic bottles and cigarette butts from the beach alongside local volunteers. She'd been sunburned, sweaty, and completely absorbed in conversations with environmental activists about coral reef protection. Jade had surprised me even more. During her kitchen shift, she'd connected with Isabella, the server she'd been so rude to earlier in the week. I'd overheard them talking about Jade's struggle with anxiety and how Isabella's patience with difficult customers had inspired her to think differently about service work. By the end of the shift, Jade was asking Isabella to teach her some basic Jamaican patois, genuinely curious about the culture she dismissed so casually before. But it was Aunt Brenda who had undergone the most profound change. She'd appointed herself the unofficial coordinator of their redemption tour, ensuring they showed up on time, participated fully, and reflected on each experience afterward. Last night, she'd knocked on my villa door with tears in her eyes. I failed them, she'd said, settling into one of my outdoor chairs. I knew they could be entitled and dismissive, but I thought it was just youthful thoughtlessness. I should have corrected them years ago. It's not too late, I told her. People can change at any age if they want to. Is that what happened to you? She'd asked. Did you change, or were you always this strong? I'd thought about her question long into the night. The truth was I had changed. The quiet, invisible Kira who'd accepted exclusion and dismissal was still part of me, but she'd been joined by someone else, someone who'd learned that true power wasn't about demanding respect, it was about commanding it through your actions. Now, as checkout time approached, I made my way down to the lobby to see them off. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would they be resentful? Grateful? Would this experience matter once they returned to their regular lives? I found them gathered near the front desk, luggage neatly arranged, looking remarkably different from the loud, overdressed group that had arrived a week ago. Monica was wearing a simple sundress and had her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Jade was chatting quietly with one of the bellhops, asking about his family in Spanish that was clearly recently learned. Aunt Brenda saw me first and walked over with a smile. Perfect timing. We were hoping to see you before we left. How are you feeling about the week? I asked. Humbled, she said simply. And grateful. You could have made this week hell for us, but you chose to make it educational instead. Monica approached us, looking nervous but determined. Kira, I need to say something. I've been thinking all week about why we excluded you, and I realized it wasn't about room availability or logistics. It was about insecurity. I raised an eyebrow. Insecurity. You were always different, she continued. Quieter, more thoughtful, more, I don't know, substantial. We felt threatened by that, so we convinced ourselves you were less than us. It was easier than admitting we were intimidated by your intelligence. Jade nodded, joining our circle. We spent so much energy trying to look successful that we never bothered actually becoming successful. Meanwhile, you were out here building an empire in silence. I wasn't trying to build an empire, I said honestly. I was just trying to build a life where I didn't need anyone's permission to belong. And you did it, Aunt Brenda said, her voice full of pride. You built all of this, not just the resort, but the person you've become. You're gracious in victory, compassionate when you could be cruel, and wise enough to turn a moment of revenge into a moment of growth. As they prepared to leave, each of them hugged me goodbye. Monica whispered that she was planning to volunteer at a homeless shelter when she got home. Jade mentioned she'd enrolled in a Spanish class and was thinking about studying international relations. Even their departure was quieter, more respectful. They thanked the staff genuinely and tipped appropriately. After their car disappeared down the Palm Line Drive, I walked back to my villa and out onto the terrace that overlooked the resort. Staff members were already preparing the beach for the next wave of guests, setting up umbrellas and arranging lounge chairs with meticulous care. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasha, the first communication I'd received from her since she'd stormed out. Saw Monica's Instagram posts about the volunteer work. Maybe I should have stayed. Proud of what you built, cuz. I smiled and put my phone away without responding. Some lessons had to be learned on their own timeline. Standing there, looking out over the paradise I'd created through years of hard work, strategic thinking, and quiet determination, I felt something I'd never experienced at a family gathering, complete belonging. Not because they'd finally accepted me, but because I'd finally accepted myself. They'd excluded me from their vacation, never knowing I owned the very world they were trying to enter. But in the end, the greatest victory wasn't in revealing my success. It was in using my power to lift others up instead of tearing them down. I'd built more than a resort. I'd built a life where exclusion couldn't touch me, where my worth wasn't determined by anyone else's approval, and where I could extend grace even to those who'd show me none. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the paradise I'd created from nothing but vision and determination. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, unshakably free.